Right, so I thought I'd come out tonight and answer a burning question that I'm sure every flashlight enthusiast asks. And that is, should I go for a single emitter light or a multi-emitter light? So I've got a selection of torches out here tonight. I've got a Maglite. It's not an ordinary Maglite. This is a home modified one. So we've got a Cree MTG2, which is a huge LED in there. It's in an op reflector and it's not overly deep. So this thing is more of a flooder than a thrower. So it's a few years old, this emitter now. You don't see it in that many lights. It's been sort of superseded. This is a single mode torch. It's just running direct drive, but it's quite heavily hampered by the wires it's running, so it's not crazy bright for what these emitters can do, but it's still quite a good comparison of what a single large emitter in this sort of size reflector can do. Also another slightly older torch. This is one of my favourite torches. This is actually a 4.7's Maelstrom MMU. So it's a single 26650 light, but it's running the luminous SST90. I don't believe these were ever driven that hard, and they do have some sort of thermal regulation, so they do sort of peg back a little bit if it believes it's getting warm. It won't tonight. We're just above freezing outside, but again, this is a large emitter in a reflector that's not massively smaller perhaps than the Maglites, a little bit smaller. Obviously the overall torch is much smaller, but again, I think it represents a more of a floody light than an out and out thrower. Of course there are more modern emitters. We've got the XHP70 and the SBT90. I don't have any torches with those emitters, which is why I've brought those two with us. The first multi-emitter light, so I think many people will probably recognise this. It was sort of the original sort of Coke can or soda can style. This is a Skyray King. It's not the original model. I've owned this one for a few years now. It's running 4 XML2s in smooth reflectors. These did vary quite a lot, from some of them being really good output and some of them being really low output. I think this was sort of a middle of the roadish type one. I've never modified it, but it's not bad. It will get quite toasty on high, so that was the reason for never modifying it. I didn't see the point in making it get any hotter. So I don't know, I'd estimate it's got to be putting out perhaps 2,500 lumens or something perhaps. Whereas if we're talking output, I think officially this little SST90 torch from 4.7's, I think this was only rated at something crazy like 800 lumens. So on paper this thing is way out of its depth here, but I think you might be surprised at how it actually performs. The mag, I'm not sure. I think this thing's pulling just under 4 amps at the tail cap. So I'll just throw those on the floor. We'll do a bit of a drop test. Sort of 3.8, 4 amps. So on that emitter, we're probably talking best part of sort of 2,000 lumens as well. Or at least that sort of ballpark. And the final torch we've got, so we've got the 4 emitter Skyray King, is of course the MFO1 Mini from Astrolux. So this is quite a new up-to-date torch. It's a 26650. We've got 7 SST20s with little tier optics. So we're going from 1 to 4 to 7. I think we've sort of come full circle. If you go back sort of 10 or 15 years ago, you used to get the shower head torches with the little 5mm LEDs in that ran on sort of 3 AAAs. We've now got something that looks very similar, but obviously performs very, very different. I believe these are rated at about 5,500 lumens on turbo. I think they're pulling sort of 15.9 amp at the tail cap at that sort of output. But on its normal high mode, it's a bit more modest. I think you're talking more like sort of 2,000 lumens, or 2,500 lumens, which puts it, in the ballpark of some of these other flashlights. So we'll give them a go. Okay, so we'll start with the Maglite. So remember that was the MTG2 in there. So we'll fire up. And wow, that's a nice beam. Huge hotspot. I mean, the hotspot's basically the entire bale stack there, but a massive wide spill beam on this thing as well. You know, this is nice. We can light up the front of that barn quite easy. We haven't got the most throw on this, but you know, we can light up down into the yard, whip round. Unfortunately, the fog is rapidly coming in again. We do seem to have a lot of fog at the moment, so we can't really shine out across the fields. But we can see this is nice. And also what you perhaps can't see is the tint on this thing is lovely. I can't remember if this was something like 4000K tint. It's the only MTG2 I've got in this tint bin, and it is probably my favourite tint of any flashlight I own. It really is a gorgeous sort of golden coloured light, and it really makes all the colours pop. Right, so this fog's really coming in, so let's move on to the next. Right, so we'll go with the little 4.7s. So remember, this thing is only meant to be making 800 lumens, and it's like, oh, if that's only 800 lumens, that's a lot of 800s for me. Hotspot's slightly smaller, a bit tighter. We've got a bit more of a focused beam on this, but you can see like we're reaching out to that barn quite well. We've still got a really big spill beam. The spot on it's not quite as big as the bale stack, but it lights up nice. Go and look down into the yard there. You know, I think we've got a bit more throw on this than the Maglite, but we are trading probably some of the output a little bit. But this is pretty good, you know, for 800 lumens against something that's definitely putting out the thick end of 2000 lumens. It doesn't really look shortchanged on the camera. The tint on this though is a lot whiter. Again, the auto white balance on the camera does tend to obscure that a bit, so you might not notice it, but that Maglite definitely has the best tint. This is a fun little pocket torch. Right, to the Skyray King. So what do 4XML2s look like? Pretty good. Again, we've got that large hotspot. We've got quite a large spill beam, although perhaps tails off a bit towards the edge there. It gets a little bit ringy. Just see a little bit on there on the camera. But we can light the barn up well. But, you know, having 4 emitters, you know, this thing's definitely pumping out more lumens officially. I'm not sure that's really outdoing that single emitter Maglite or even the 4.7s. Not by a huge amount anyhow. You know, to the eye they look quite similar performance. See if we can get them side by side in a few minutes. Right, so the 2020 and the Astrolux MF01 Mini. So there we are on high, and we can see we've got a completely different beam profile with this, and that's because it hasn't got reflectors. It's using those tier optics, so we have basically a complete absence of hotspot. Or I suppose the other way of looking at it is the entire beam is just a hotspot and we have no spill beam. So whereas the other lights have quite a sharp cutoff from the spill beam to darkness, this just sort of gradually gets a little bit dimmer and then goes to black. But the rest of it is all one even illumination. So we can light up those bales there, you know, easy. There's no hotspot on them at all because there's no hotspot to view. And we can still reach a barn and actually light that all up. And go down the way. And unfortunately, that fog's really coming in. I was hoping to get some distance as we've got some trees out there we could view. That's not going to happen. But the big difference is, and with the other lights, none of them have any sort of turbo mode. You know, turbo modes do tend to be a more modern feature in the last sort of few years. So if I give this a double tap, we're upping the lumens even more, and I think that does make a difference, and that's where you start to see these lights are brighter. And of course that's what you're going to get with a multi-emitter light. At the end of the day, they are going to be more efficient because you can run each emitter at a slightly lower output than a single one, but the combined effect is you're going to have more lumens overall. But fitting them into the same size sort of body or head does mean you've got to sacrifice beam profile to be slightly different. But this is a really nice little light if you want to light up a big area. But you can see you can't really see the beam so much. It's just a flood of light. All right, let's see if we can get a few comparisons going, shall we? Right, so that's that Maglite, pointing down a little bit there, but trying to do this one-handed. And as you can see, I think it's quite clear actually going back to this from the MFO1 Mini. We do have more of a beam profile on this. You can sort of see that being illuminated in the fog, and the spill is wider, but it's not as bright because you've got that hot spot. But this mag's not doing that bad really against that multi-emitter MFO1 Mini. And if you had the right driver set up, there's no reason why you couldn't run this emitter on a single battery as well and be sort of similar sized. But yeah, that's the mag. Let's compare that to the 4.7s. So you can clearly see the 4.7 beam coming over it. But I say, this little 4.7's light, for something that's only supposed to be 800 lumens, it's doing a pretty good job. I'll kick the Skyray King on as well. Oh, I think we're getting a bit more of a difference there, although I think the mag's starting to thermal a bit and probably sagging on those batteries. So we're probably not getting quite such a fair comparison. I'll turn the mag off a little bit now. So that's the Skyray King. So we'll try that against the 4.7s. And again, you can still see the 4.7s. It's different. We've got a different kind of beam to the Skyray King, but again, for something that's only meant to be 800 lumens, I'm not quite sure how this little thing lights up what it does. But the Skyray King is quite impressive. It's quite chunky and requires 4 batteries. Although I think tonight we've only actually got 2 in there at the moment, because they're all wired in parallel, so you just got a much lower runtime with 2 batteries than you would with 4. We'll keep the Skyray King going there for a sec. Get it to balance without rolling off. Okay, let's go back to the Mini. So overall, despite the fact we've got completely different setups with 4 different types of emitter, 4 different types of torch, it's amazing how similar they actually perform overall, regardless of what the lux readings are, for intensity, their CD value or their lumen output. The practical reality is they all seem to light up a very similar amount of area to quite a similar amount of illumination. You've got all those lumens with the Mini, which I think helps it give the beam distance, and you've got that nice even beam, but then the total area it lights up seems to be less because it doesn't have the spill beam. The Skyray King, that's pretty good, but it's like strapping 4 tube lights together really and just turning them all on. So you've got 4 relatively small reflectors which are building up to give you that sort of big hotspot. Of course, you've got the Maglite, which you're not going to be able to buy something quite like this Maglite off the shelf, but if you want something with this sort of size reflector and this LED in, they're not that hard to make. It's not a thrower, but it still seems to have enough lumens that you're getting some sort of usable beam distance compared to the others out of this. you know, and it's just lighting up a huge area as well. You know, quite a nice walking light, because you've got a little bit of distance with the spot, but it's going to light up the ground immediately in front of you. And then the oddball one, the 4.7s, which of course you can't buy anymore. They don't actually make this one. So the flood beam's not quite as wide on it, but you know, and definitely more of a throwy beam compared to the mag. But for something that's only rated at 800 lumens, you know, switching between all these lights out here, you don't really feel as though you're being shortchanged by any of them. You know, I think it is the adage of it's how you use it rather than how much you've got, is probably very, very true. Anyhow, let me know what you think. Single emitter or multi-emitter lights? What would you go for?